seen this deck kind of crop up, and then all of a sudden, 2 rounds in a row, we see Mono Blue Devotion, and now here we see it in the mirror match. And
yeah, I think it's because they lost to blue-white control early in the day, and now they're finally, getting on camera because they're X and 1. They clawed back from being really far behind.
Yeah, me and Matthias were talking about this in between rounds, that I think the Mono Blue Devotion matchup against blue-white control, it's always been kind of difficult, but after board, at least it got a little bit better. Whereas now, the blue-white decks have access to Revoke Existence, even cards like Brahmaz and, that Archangel of Thrun, which has been gaining in popularity. So the sideboard strategy for blue-white is kind of adapted to what Mono Blue has been doing. So I think the matchup can be very difficult for the Mono Blue deck.
Yeah, I agree. But onto the match here. Majors on the play with a double Cloudfin Raptor draw, but nothing to pump it just yet. Tidebinder Mage for the actual blowouts, tapping the Frostburn Weird, which is half red, and pumping both Cloudfin Raptors and getting in some damage. Eric's going to fall really far behind here unless he has something like a Night Veil Spectre to hold the fort against the Cloudfin Raptors. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, and Michael also looks like he has a Thassa and a Master Waves in his hand. And,
oh boy.
Eric does have, 1 copy of Rapid Hybridization and 2 Domestications in his deck as sort of answer to those cards. But, again, it's going to be pretty difficult for him given this board state.
Right. And Eric, from what I saw of his hand, I think he has a Jace in there, but it looked like he had multiple Tidebinder Mages. And when your opponent doesn't play a Frostburn Weird, it doesn't really do a whole lot.
Yeah, so here we go. Michael's going to cast Thassa. It is a creature because he has 5 devotion to blue, and so the Cloudfin Raptors are going to both evolve, and he's going to be able to swing over for 4 now, dropping Eric to 14.
Yeah, now there's a lot of confusion with Thassa and evolve, mostly due to the fact that turning into a creature, some people think that, oh, it's not a creature when you're casting, it's only a creature once it's in play, but once it's in, there was like this weird limbo effect, but there is actually really strange interaction when you play a second Thassa because of how the legend rule works. I think it's something like if you sacrifice the original Thassa, the new Thassa will trigger evolve, but otherwise it won't.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Eric plays a Nykthos, which now can net him 4 mana because he has both the Weird and the Tidebinder Mage in play. So let's see if he can get something going here. Probably the best play for him is to be able to maybe steal one of those, or maybe Master Waves could be good here, and then follow up with the Cyclonic Rift. But look, it doesn't even look like he has a Cyclonic Rift in his main. Oh, no, he does. Eric doesn't. Oh, yeah, so Eric doesn't have a Cyclonic Rift. Michael does. So it looks like he's just going to have to drop 2 Tidebinder Mages out there.
Yeah, that's actually really strange that Eric is playing 1 copy of Nykthos but not playing Cyclonic Rift. Normally those 2 cards go hand in hand in this deck list, and a lot of people have been cutting Nykthos and Cyclonic Rift from their deck, but you very rarely see one without the other.
Yeah.
But Major's here in a very strong board position. And one thing to note that Eric is actually 7-0-1 and not 7-1, so even a loss here doesn't actually eliminate him from contention, whereas a loss for Majors does eliminate him from contention. And Eric will have to win next round if he does lose this match. So.
Yeah, a win here for Michaels is huge because not only could he potentially draw next round, but again, like you said, a second loss likely knocks him out of contention. So he scries in his upkeep, and it looks like he does not keep the card. And now he has the option. He could just make Thassa unblockable and swing over for 9, threatening lethal next turn. There's not much that Eric could really do about that. But again, Michael doesn't know whether or not there's a Cyclonic Rift in Eric's deck.
Right, and that's something that he's trying to play around. And playing the Master Waves doesn't actually accomplish a whole lot, I don't think. He has a hugely dominating board presence, and he can actually make his Tidebinder Mage and his Thassa unblockable, and then swing in for 11, putting Eric to 3, and in a pretty weak board position. But it looks like Majors has a second Tidebinder Mage double tapping down the Frostburn Weird in case any rapid hybridization shenanigans happen. I think this is mostly to protect from rapid hybridization so that it doesn't turn off Thassa mid-combat, and he's probably going to just activate target Thassa and hit him for 9.
Yeah, he's just going to try to make sure that unblockable Thassa next turn is definitely going to kill Eric. So looks like that is what's going to happen unless Eric can, not sure what Eric can draw here. Like we said, he doesn't have that Cyclonic Rift in his deck.
Yeah. He's going to tank here for a minute, see if he can put some guys into play, and then Thassa will very likely target herself and swing across for 5 in the air, or unblockable in the, I don't know, the ether. I was going to say in the air, but it's
in the negative zone.
Yeah.
So Eric has access to 8 mana with Nykthos. He can actually generate 10 mana in total, but it doesn't look like he has an answer to that Thassa. He has a Night Veil Spectre. It looks like a Jace.
I mean, he can tick down the Jays, so maybe he forgot he doesn't have a Cyclonic Rift in his deck, and he wants to dig for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might as well see a little more action. Just do as much as you can in one turn.
Yeah, just give your opponent maximum information for sideboarding purposes.
So, yeah, it looks like he's going to keep that Mutavault up. He's going to activate Nykthos for blue, generating 8 mana here. Domestication, so he could... He's going to cast Jace here. It looks like he's going to likely down-tick it.
Yeah, I mean, he could hit... I mean, even if he hits, like, 2 very relevant spells, there's no way Major's going to put them both in the same pile. So, like, even if he hit, like, Rapid Domestication, he's not going to put those in the same thing to be able to, like, turn off the Thassa next turn. So, looks like Eric's just going to get a Nightveil Spectre and then probably concede. Or he might just force Majors to...
Yeah, you definitely force him to do it, right?
Yeah. Got the fear. The fear of quadruple rapid hybridization to turn off Thassa.
So it looks like Eric has 4 mana left in his hand, in his mana pool. I think he has a Bident, which he could play this turn.
Yeah, I mean, he would effectively gain 1 extra card out of it if he played Bident and attacked with his Tidebinder Mages, because Majors would probably... actually, he might not trade off. He wants to keep his Thassa active, so he might just give him a million free cards because there's no 2-mana spell that he's really afraid of, so...
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't really care about Cyclonic Rift at this point in the game.
Yep, so there's the Bident with the rest of the mana floating. Going to battle in here for 6, draw some cards, and...
And he knows that Eric played a land this turn, so it's unlikely he has a flyer.
Yeah, now Majors does have to make the decision whether or not he wants to block. I think the smart play is to not block so that you can make sure that you maintain your devotion for Thassa. There's no real way Eric can turn it off for just 2 mana here. Now, if he did have Cyclonic Rift, he could just bounce Thassa. So it looks like, I assume Majors here is going to attack with his flyers, and he's also going to make his Tidebinder Mage unblockable. Because the only way he really loses, I think, is if... or not loses, but the only way Eric can really catch back up from this very specific position is if he has Cyclonic Rift targeting Thassa.
Yeah, and good news is he actually drew a Judge's Familiar, so you could have played that pre-combat, but chose not to, and Eric loses the first game. Michael's now 1-0 in this matchup, in this do-or-die matchup for him, where he really needs to win this game. So what do we got after board? I mean, how does the mirror match play out?
Well, for me, the mirror match always played out, well, I cast Domestication targeting your Nightveil Spectre or your Master Waves, and you play this really reactive game where you try to gainsay everything.
Yeah.
I like not playing gainsay, but both of them are. I really like being the aggressive, or being on the aggressive in this matchup, because people do like to be on the defensive. I think the Judge's Familiar is fantastic at, bottlenecking your opponent's mana so that their gainsays aren't nearly as good. And so I honestly just hate the fact that people just always play gainsay in this matchup. But it looks like Eric Gray does have 2 domestications in his sideboard.
So he can go up to 4.
So he can go up to 4. Majors has 2 main deck, and it looks like he has 0 in the sideboard. So Eric's going to have a huge domestication advantage here. Oh, excuse me, he has 1 more. I'm sorry, Majors has 1 more domestication in his sideboard. His handwriting is a little bit of a scribble. We're going to have to talk to his mom about that.
And what do you board out? I mean, we saw that the Tidebinder Mage tapped down Frostburn Weird. Frostburn Weird seems like one of those cards that you're okay with taking out in the mirror matchup.
Yeah, I actually don't like the more expensive cards other than Jace. I mean, Cyclonic Rift is obviously a blowout, and I think it's a card you just kind of need. I actually don't like Bident that much. Yeah. I feel like that card isn't going to really... Like, if you're far ahead on board, you don't really need to be far ahead in card advantage. And Bident is kind of just this black hole of tempo where you're trading your entire turn 4 and... like playing a card out of your hand to like draw 3 cards basically. Whereas I want to just be playing cards that just overwhelm my opponent's board presence. That's why I think Domestication is so important, and that's why I don't think Gainsay is that important. But I mean, I'm sure I'm going to be proven wrong, and Domestication is going to counter an overloaded Cyclonic Rift, and one person's going to swing for the win. So.
Yeah, given your stance on things, I wouldn't be surprised if Gainsay wins the game for one of these players. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm with you. I definitely like being the aggressor. But the thing is, I think because Gainsay is effective against other decks like Blue-White Control, you kind of want it in your sideboard. So it feels foolish almost to like have it in your sideboard and not bring it in for the mirror.
Sure.
But I agree with you. I mean, obviously the Domestication is probably the card that I've seen win mono blue the most games, just walking around and playing it.
Well,
and,
I would say Master Waves wins more games than
Oh
Domestication.
yeah.
But
well, I mean,
Domestication
of sideboard cards.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, it's obviously a really important card. I do like cutting the Frostburn Weirds simply because Tidebinder Mage does shut it down. But Frostburn Weird also takes a reasonable amount of investment on mana to actually become a significant threat in the mirror match. Whereas Tidebinder Mage can just like, you know, battle for 2. It also combos really well with Rapid Hybridization, which you want to keep as answers to opposing Masters of Waves, besides your just like, you know, small amount of Domestication. But yeah, I mean, Majors has access to a second Cyclonic Rift, which he's probably bringing in along with the Gainsays and the Domestication. So he has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like 5 cards he's going to be bringing in. I suspect he'll be cutting the 2 Bidents and probably 3 Frostburn Weirds.
Yeah.
And maybe bring in the the 3rd Rapid Hybridization, and maybe cutting the last Frostburn Weird.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically 6 for 6 swap.
Yeah.
And those cards are all effective in the mirror match. Eric is the same thing. I agree with you. I think Weird and Biden are probably the weakest cards in the mirror. He's got 2 copies of Domestication he can bring in. He's got 2 Cyclonic Risks. He doesn't have any in the main, so he can board in those. Obviously, they would have been great for him in game 1. He has 1 copy of Rapid Hybridization, so he'll go up to 2 after board, and then he has 3 Gainsays. So again, similar sideboard strategy, 6 for 6.
Yeah, we're
gonna be that's pretty similar.
Yeah, the decks after board are going to be somewhere around like 57 to 6, or not quite 60 cards the same, but they're going to be around 57 cards the same. So not a true mirror match, but really close, as close as you can get without actually being. So.
Yeah, basically the main difference is Michael has only 3 Domestications after board, whereas Eric has 4, and Michael has a 3rd Rapid Hybridization as opposed to just 3 from Eric. So it's basically which card is better in the mirror, Rapid Hybridization or Domestication. Obviously, Domestication is more powerful, but Hybridization is a little easier to play around Gainsay. You know, the fact that it's an instant, it can kind of it's a little trickier than Domestication.
Yeah, I agree. And there is a lot of value to being able to Rapid Hybridization your own creature in response to a Domestication, because if you're able to do that, you're still able to maintain pressure on the board while countering one of the best spells that your opponent could play against you. And if they're stealing something like a Night Veil Spectre, you know, you get to replace your 2/3 with a 3/3, so it's like actually 1 extra power. While time walking them and getting rid of one of their best cards. So Rapid's going to be pretty strong in this matchup. Aside from the vast majority of the creatures and Domestication, I think Rapid Hybridization is going to be pretty strong.
So Eric is on the play. Both players keep their opening 7, but he doesn't have neither player has a 1-drop.
I think 1-drops are actually one of the easiest ways to get ahead in this matchup. You saw how dominant Majors was in game 1 by playing double Cloudfin Raptor, and even though he didn't have the triple 1-drop start of double Raptor into Judge's Familiar, his turn 3 play of Tidebinder Mage lock down your guy, into turn 4 Thassa pump my guy's attack for 4, just put Eric on the back foot from the get-go. And even if he had drawn like a Night Veil Spectre or something to block, Majors could have had so many things to answer it. And
yeah, I agree with you.
Oh yeah, and
hybridization is really tough. I mean, 1-drops are really important.
Yeah, I agree. Majors does have the Gainsay for the turn 3 Night Veil Spectre, but you can see he's not really doing a whole lot, and Eric does have some pressure on the board. So now Majors is kind of playing this like kind of weird control strategy where he doesn't really have the tools to really gain that card advantage, to really try to 1-for-1 his opponent to death. And Eric can do the same thing now because he already has pressure in play, and he can just play a 2-drop and hold up for like you know, his own Gainsay or something like that. But it looks like another Gainsay on another Night Veil Spectre, and Eric's just kind of given Majors really prime opportunities to cast his Gainsays.
Yeah, obviously Gainsay is one of those cards that shines if you can go 1-drop, 2-drop. And then you can kind of sit back and counter some of the key spells like Night Veil Spectre or Domestication. Obviously, in this position for Michael, it's not ideal, but I still think he's in pretty good shape just because, you know, Eric doesn't really have much going, and 2 of his most important spells were Night Veil Spectres were gone now. So, and Michael still has a lot of his sideboard cards in his hand. He has a Domestication. Looks like he has a Cyclonic Rift in his hand as well.
Yeah, I mean, this should be an interesting game. Like, it's obviously off to a slow start. Eric here actually has a Biden still in his deck, and it could maybe take control of this game if he has like another threat to drop here, maybe one with evasion if he has another Night Veil Spectre, but I am almost positive Majors is going to trade off the Tidebinder Mages here. Otherwise, that Biden's going to get him an extra card, and then you know what happens when Biden starts going with mono blue. It just kind of steamroll effects, and Michael definitely understands that and makes the trade.
Yeah, you can't let Eric get a card there, and then God forbid he draws a 1-drop. So things can get out of control really quickly.
Yeah, but Major's hand looks completely stacked here, and this is one of the reasons why I don't like Biden in the matchup, because he played Biden on turn 4, just traded off a creature, and got no value out of it. And Major's, now he's just going to hold back his Mutavault. So, I mean, Biden effectively gaining him a few points of life, gaining Eric a few points of life, rather, so that Majors doesn't attack to protect with his own Mutavaults against the opposing Mutavault to prevent a card draw.
Eric did draw Thassa here, so Thassa, you know, the unblockable ability, along with Mutavault, is could be pretty effective. We'll see what happens.
He can't activate it this turn, and I think this actually is not the strongest trade in my opinion, simply because when you have a Biden in play and a Thassa coming down and about to become active, it's really important that you keep as many threats on the board as you can, because you want to turn those threats into ways to draw cards and deal damage. It looks like Majors now has access to Cyclonic Rift, Domestication, a Master of Waves, and maybe even his own Thassa.
Yeah, not only that, but Mutavault is one of those cards that can't be domesticated. You actually domesticate it. So, yeah, I agree with you. Trading it there seemed a little odd, but
yeah, Eric is desperately wanting a 2 devotion card here to turn on Thassa, because that would allow him to swing in for 5 damage, draw a card, and then have an active Thassa for at least a few turns. But looks like he drew Master Waves, so that's not going to turn on Thassa, and it's probably just going to get domesticated for Majors, while and that'll also turn on Majors' devotion for Thassa and allow him to attack for 7 next turn,
yeah,
or at least for 5.
Yeah, so next turn could be huge for Major. It's basically going to wipe out all of the elementals on Eric's side of the board and turn on his own Thassa, and he can swing for 7. It could get to the point where the card draw might not even be relevant, because he's got Thassa going. He can start making things unblockable, and yeah, it doesn't really matter, because I'd say this matchup's really more about tempo than anything else.
Yeah,
he's still got that Cyclonic Rift too.
Yeah. Just holding it in the bank, just in case the market crashes. All right, well, all the tokens say goodbye. That the Domestication plus Master Waves will turn on the Thassa and allow him to smash it for 7. That puts Eric all the way down to 9, and now he still needs a double devotion card, and it really just has to be Domestication, or else he's just dead, I think. I mean, the Thassa being active now means that all of the other opposing creatures are going to be unblockable, and that's 9 points of damage, and he's at 9, so.
Yeah, and the fact that the Domestication basically is a devotion for 3 for Michael really is the key there. I'm with you. He really needs he needs something that will turn on his Thassa and also take away Michael's devotion.
Yeah, so he's probably going to cast a creature here pre-combat to maintain the devotion from Thassa.
And what a creature.
Yeah, and then also, well, he probably should have attacked with Mutavault. Perhaps he has, or he wanted to hold up for Cyclonic Rift or something like that, but yeah. Majors very easily takes game 2 to move to 8-1 and potentially in a drawn-in situation for next round.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where obviously you could say Michael was better prepared, but really he just drew all his sideboard cards.
Yeah, I mean he drew very well.
Yeah, Eric, maybe you can make the argument that Eric shouldn't have had the Biden in his main deck after board.
Yeah, but no spell there would have mattered all that much, except maybe a Domestication, but he's already got 4, so it's not really like that big of a deal.
Yeah, Majors just drew too many of his sideboard cards.
Multiple gainsays to counter probably the best creature in the mirror match, which is Night Veil Spectre. Aside, maybe you could make an argument for Master of Waves, but I honestly think that Night Veil Spectre is the best card in the mirror match, simply because if left, alone for too long, it just allows you to draw too many cards off your opponent's deck. So like hit land drops to cast Cyclonic Rift, or just like cast multiple spells in the same turn, hit an opposing Master of Waves, something like that.
I think the key thing